The government has announced wide-ranging investment in the armed forces ahead of the publication of its latest strategic defence review. One suggestion for military readiness as global tensions rise has been the reintroduction of national service, which previously affected those aged between 17 to 21 and was ended in 1960.
Yeah, my dad did national service, and I think he thinks of it as one of the proudest moments of his life when he did it. Should we reintroduce it in order to increase society's resilience? Joining us to debate this now, former Defence Minister and a regimental colonel for the Rifles, Tobias Ellwood, who believes that if we don't have conscription or national service, there could be serious consequences for the defence of our realm. And also joining us, investigative journalist Yanis Baboulias, who thinks it's wrong and everyone should have a choice. Now, Yanis, very good morning to both of you. You come from a country, Greece originally, which does have compulsory national service. So did you do it?
No, it was deferred because I live here.
Right, so you left the country at around the same age that you would have been conscripted.
Did you leave the country in order to avoid the national service?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
It just happened to be at the same age.
You are basically called to the national service when you graduate from high school. Mm-hmm. So if you're going abroad to study, that gets deferred for the duration of your studies plus 2 years. So doing a master's, I ended up kind of being 28.
OK, so it can be deferred and you'd left the country anyway. What is the view of national service in Greece? Because if you're against it, that suggests that you don't think that it works as a national policy.
It doesn't do what it says on paper. We are looking at bolstering the armed forces. We're looking at making people feel more patriotic, more proud of their country. If you look at where Greece is at, it doesn't do any of that.
What does it do?
The politics are as divided. The army is in a fairly bad state. And what conscripts basically do is bolster local economies by simply loitering around for 9 months.
What, conscripts just loiter about? They're not actually training?
No, the training takes place in 45 days, in the first 45 days when you are conscripted.
Right.
And then the rest of the time, not much is done.
Well, that doesn't sound like an effective system that should be introduced here, Tobias Ellwood. You presumably have a different vision.
Well, good morning. And that isn't the model that I'm actually suggesting and have suggested for a couple years now. This is a dated view as what national service should look like today. You've been discussing all morning the fact that threats are only growing. We're having to become war ready. Our industry needs to move to a war footing. Our Army, Air Force and Navy can't protect us. It's too expensive to have them at high readiness permanently. So we need to find other ways of meeting the challenges that are coming over the hill, which are very different from during the Cold War. We are constantly attacked by cyber. There's disinformation campaigns. There's a new form of grey zone warfare that I believe that we can counter with an all-of-society approach. So we tap into capabilities such as bolstering our fire service, NHS. So it can be Army, Air Force or Navy, but it's also having cyber specialists, people that can use 3D printers or space analysts.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Former Defence Minister, distinguished military career, huge military expertise. I'm sure you are, as you're saying, pleased that the government is talking about us being on a modern war footing. But very many people who have served in the military, our military leaders, say all of that is good, but national service is the wrong approach, hugely expensive, big diversion of resources, accommodation, training for people who may not want to be there. It's not the priority. What we ought to be doing is recruiting more people who want to serve properly in the armed forces or in the reserves. National service is a waste of money.
So I'm saying that the Army, Air Force and Navy cannot deal with the types of threats that we're now faced with. Plus the fact that we're being attacked not on battlefields afar, where the Army, Air Force and Navy would normally be involved, but actually here, all of society is being attacked on a regular basis. And what I'm saying is every one of us must ask ourselves, what can we do to bolster our competence, our capability, our readiness? And I'm saying that 18-year-olds would go through a programme, could be Army, Air Force or Navy, but I say, as it could be cyber specialists, it could be AI analysts, it could be other aspects, Coast Guards protecting our undersea cables. And that means they've done that training And then, should things get worse, they can be called upon to bolster our capability and our deterrence.
You're saying that it's the right use of what would be billions of pounds as opposed to other things that could be spent on the military?
I'm looking at is what we've seen in Finland that does exactly this. It's got a small standing army, but at a moment's notice, because generations have gone through, 18-year-olds have gone through, they can look at their entire society. They've all got a role to play, whether it be flood defences, whether it be helping in the NHS, such as we needed in COVID and so forth. Not just leaning on our army, air force
like
or
a
navy.
dad's army rather than a actually full-time
home guard
military service.
No, because many of them will not be in uniform. And yes, there will be a new protection force that's actually in the Defence Review to look after our critical national infrastructure from those drones. And if I can just say, sir, as a former Chancellor, you should appreciate the importance of protecting our economy. If we don't do that with security, every single...
Even Tobias thinks Even Tobias thinks it.
Every single government department will be affected if our economy is then hit. So investing in greater security is absolutely critical.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you one question again. Are you saying that 18 or 19-year-olds should be paid, accommodated and trained for 6 months or a year into the armed forces? Is that the model?
No, it's not straightforward. And that's why armchair generals and former generals probably say no, because they have this dated view of this.
They don't
this is a much more modernised approach where it could be Army, Air Force and Navy, but no, other things too.
I still don't see where the logistics of this would come from, who would be administering all of these. We're talking about 1.5 million teenagers that come of age every year in the UK. The logistics behind such an operation would simply be, at a time, we can't retain actual armed forces. We can't retain teachers, we can't recruit them, but we will somehow find the people to administer 1.5 million teenagers every year. That is simply not a realistic proposition, especially when we're looking at how the armed forces, the actual armed forces that we do have, when the services that we do have are underfunded, understaffed, and the situation is not actually getting any better.
I just wonder, because of this incredible drone attack operated by remote pilots in Ukraine on Russia, which took out 40 aircraft at a Russian base. Yanis, do you not think that a national service of teenagers who are... Look, let's be frank, who's the most adept at operating things like tech other than our teenagers? Do you not think that a national service of tech-trained teenagers is a good idea and a realistic one?
No, I think to be, again, very pragmatic, I would want people with long-term views and long-term training looking into this.
We can't afford that. We simply cannot afford to have a large standing army ready to go all the time. What we need to do is have a latent capability.
May have a role to play.
A latent capability that, should something happen, should an attack take place, we can then call upon them because that skill set is embedded across society.
You cannot learn in 6 months how to carry out.
No, you do training every single couple of years.
So that's an extra course. That, again,
these kids have been playing Call of Duty for a very long time. Thank you both very much indeed.
We asked you whether it's time to move back national service. 42% of you said yes. 58% of you said no, which is really interesting.